Welcome to this explainer. Okay, today we're diving into something that literally blew my mind. What if I told you that one of humanity's oldest, most revered spiritual texts, the Bhagavad Gita, isn't just some abstract philosophical dialogue, but is actually a highly specific piece of computer code? Seriously, we're going to examine the wild, fascinating proposition that this ancient text is actually describing a literal computational state space.
Just listen to this beautiful translation by Edwin Arnold. Never the spirit was born, the spirit shall cease to be never. Never was time it was not. End and beginning are dreams. For thousands of years we've read those words as pure mysticism. But today we're asking a pretty radical question. How can we interpret this exact ancient poetry as structural mechanized laws of physics?
So let's look at this stark contrast. On one side, we have the ancient mystic concept of the soul, or atman. But on the other, we have its formal restatement as an invariant, or sut, inside a modern computational theorem-proving software known as Dhamma field. Actually, think about that for a second. We are literally mapping a text from the 2nd century BCE directly into the cold, hard logic of a modern computer environment. It's a game changer, right? Just an incredible bridge between two seemingly incompatible worlds.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll hit up 1. The Computational Battlefield, 2. The Tripartite System Setup, 3. Karma and entropy texts, 4. The 3 code loops, 5. Cosmic event horizons, and finally, 6. The master theorem. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The Computational Battlefield, exploring the mixed state.
Now, the famous hook of the Gita is the warrior Arjuna's massive emotional crisis on a battlefield. But if we look at it structurally, this battlefield, Kurukshetra, is mathematically defined as the race phase or mixed state. It's basically a system condition where truth and failure are completely indistinguishable at the agent level. So Arjuna's despair, that's mathematically defined as introversion, refusal, or IVR. Think of it like a glitching simulation where he literally cannot see the structural truth through all the chaotic binary noise of his own senses.
So, how exactly does this system resolve all this noise? Well, by introducing the atman. Mathematically speaking, the atman is the invariant, or sat. It is the core structural truth of the state space. It's kind of like an indestructible root file that just cannot be corrupted by any user-level errors or perturbations. So when the text tells us that end and beginning are dreams, it formally means that, sure, system reboots or universal amnesia might erase the temporary frames of data, but they never, ever erase the atman itself. Moving on to Section 2, the Tripartite System Setup, defining the architecture. A super common misconception is that the Gita just splits the universe into self and world. But it actually relies on a highly specific trichotomy, a 3-part setup. First, you have the jiva, or agent. Think of this as the player character, embodied, enduring, but limited. Second is prakriti, the operator, basically the game's physics engine, or the surface of transitions. And third is Purushottama, or God, the supreme coder who actually authors the surface and remains totally untouched. The really brilliant thing here is that the formal ledger strictly prevents these three, agent, operator, and coder, from ever collapsing into one another. Because we have these 3 distinct positions, well, the system basically crashes if the agent gets confused about who is who. The first structural failure is what's called animal magnetism, which is where the agent mistakenly claims authorship of actions that actually belong to the coder. The second failure is operator idolatry. This is essentially worshiping the mechanism itself. It's literally like praying to your computer's motherboard instead of acknowledging the programmer who wrote the software. So true structural immunity, that belongs strictly to the supreme position alone. All right, Section 3, Karma and Entropy Tax, the cost algebra of the universe.
Now we transition from the system's architecture to its actual mechanics. And let me just pose this question to you. What do you think happens mathematically when you copy an action? Because in this framework, karma is absolutely not some mystical cosmic punishment. No way. It is literally defined as a no-cloning tax drawn straight from information theory.
The math dictates that every duplicated attached action generates its exact score in karmic entropy. It's like filling up a giant hard drive with tons of junk data. The only state that allows for free duplication without generating this massive entropy debt is the vacuum state. Therefore, karma yoga, which you might know as the famous discipline of acting without attachment, is actually the structural discipline of holding your carrier at a 0 state. You do this specifically to avoid generating all that computational drag. Okay, Section 4, the 3 code loops, visualizing the gunas. So the ancient text describes the mechanics of nature as three gunas, sattva, rajas, and tamas. But topologically, it turns out these are just interchangeable faces in a looping cycle, like a topological Triton cycle. Sattva is equilibrium, hovering safely closest to the manifold ceiling. Rajas is lift, the clinamen-driven action phase that's accumulating score. And tamas is contract, the declinamen-driven inaction phase where your score is saturating downward. They constantly turn through one another, just like gears in a machine. So clinging to any single one of these states as if it were a permanent thing is a fundamental computational error.
Moving to Section 5. Cosmic Event Horizons, the universe at scale. All right, let's radically escalate this from the individual agent all the way up to the scale of the cosmos. In the 11th chapter, we get this absolute mind-bending vision. Arjuna saw the entire universe at once, in all its manifold divisions, yet all integrated in the body of the God of gods. It's gorgeous poetry, for sure, but let's translate this imagery directly into computational topology. That blinding universal form, the Vishvarupa, maps perfectly to what we call the radiation wall. It essentially functions as the cosmic event horizon at k equals 360. Arjuna needs divine eyes to see it because he's looking directly at the topological boundary of the manifold. And honestly, here's the craziest part. At this boundary, the dissolution of the universe is not some destructive singularity. It actually acts as a black hole braid, meaning it flawlessly integrates all information rather than destroying it.
And finally, Section 6, the Master Theorem, resolving the ledger.
When all these topological proofs finally resolve into one unified structure, wow, the alignments are staggering. The atman is the invariant. The battlefield is the race phase. Yoga is the naming protocol. Duty is the specific agent index you are assigned. And in this formal Dharma field computer model, these proofs compute with absolutely zero sorry. If you're a coder, you know exactly what that means. It means the logic is mathematically flawless without a single unproven assumption. The entire ancient system is structurally stable code.
Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. If ancient spirituality and modern computational physics are really just different interfaces for the exact same underlying code, what is your functional role? What is your personal agent index within this massive, grand computational space? It really makes you think, doesn't it? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer today.